and manuscripts are not going to burn. We are in Jasionka, close to Rzeszów. Green energy in the countryside, in the rural regions. We will discuss that with various experts, academics, politicians, practitioners sit on this panel. And we will talk about how to develop green energy sources and various forms of renewable gas. Krzysztof Dziaduszyński is a renewables practitioner. He is with us, sir. Sebastian Grzegorczyk, another panelist. He's a director at Agrofert. Professor Krzysztof Księżopolski from the Warsaw University of Natural Sciences. There may not be enough seats, but we will manage. Ryszard Pawlik is also going to join us. He is an advisor to Jerzy Buzek, a Polish MEP. He's been working with the European New Deal. Not enough chairs, but we will solve this problem. I can see another seat is being brought as I speak. So this is the kind of flexibility that you can experience in the Polish countryside, and this is how we're going to challenge the energy transformation. Challenges can be solved on the spot. Gentlemen, green energy in the rural areas. Let us begin with an academic. He will give us numbers. We will see what the potential for energy transformation is there. We have talked about it with the professor for years now, also here in Rzeszów. Where do we stand in 2024? Hello. Thank you for being here. We will largely discuss the money. I believe you will learn what to do where business risks can be found. Wojtek, to answer your question. The rural areas are the biggest beneficiary of the energy transformation. The people who live there are the beneficiaries. Where do we stand? Where are we? The Polish energy policy till 2024 could be a reference point. I know it's no longer valid. It was basically out of date when it was being presented, because the assumptions were what they were. You get that in a number of countries. I remember I co-authored a paper 8 years ago on that subject, jointly with a professor from Dresden. It was being peer-reviewed and then published, and we had to change the text because data was changing. So, renewables in the Polish countryside. We have this Polish energy policy, and photovoltaics for 2030, it's already exceeded, and another target for 2040 already met and exceeded. So, if you look at photovoltaics, we are in a very good place indeed. A thank you to the foundation here. You can find a number of papers and reports on the website of the foundation. Some have been edited by Professor Buzek and myself. They cover renewables, how red tape was cut, and we have helped a bit. We've got 1.5 million prosumers. It's a lot. These are micro installations, though. Business lies elsewhere, because business is about big installations. Biogas. I am a great fan of this technology. It is a renewable technology, and you can control it. And you have those numbers from the University of Poznań. 1 million cubic meters you can get from biogas alone. Where are we there? Professor Dach has made some calculations. I would say that he was conservative in his calculations. But the potential is there, any way you slice it. We have not tapped into it. We've hardly used it at all, this potential. The question is why? Why haven't we improved our energy security by means of producing biogas, biomethane? We will discuss it further down the line. I know there are many speakers, so I'll be brief. The potential is there. It's aligned with the Polish energy policy in principle. Let's talk about instruments and structural issues. Basically, when it comes to structure, it doesn't work. We are not headed in this direction. If I have time, I will use an example, a business model, to show you how sensitive that solution is to price changes. So we will see how it works. At an example, Ryszard Pawlik from Brussels. You deal with the European Green Deal regulations discussed widely and broadly, especially here. A question, 2024. Let's talk about the support for renewables in the countryside, for farmers. What does it look like from the point of view of the Brussels legislative landscape? Hello. Everybody in the EU has learned some things in the last few years. Whenever we talked about the energy policy, Poland has postulated how important energy security is, that it's important to diversify your energy sources. We know what happened in February 2022. This is when this full-scale Russian invasion on Ukraine started. This is when people realized that energy security is important and diversification is a part of that. Also, we should stress more our self-reliance. By ours, I mean the EU. Yes, and we need to be independent. Independent, self-reliant, but that is only possible if the Polish countryside is independent and self-reliant. So regulations, which would help energy dissemination. There is this Renewable Energy Sources Directive. You've heard of the Polish objectives. There are also the European objectives for 2030. There is this objective, 55% reduction minimum, 42.5 for the EU, and there is this aspiration to reach 45. What does it mean for Poland? No proper calculations yet, but we can look at our 2020 target. We, Poland, would need 31 to 34%. This is what we would need, I believe, in 2030. Is it doable? I'll remind you. In Dubai, in December, COP28, a declaration was signed, co-signed by the Polish government, and we declared that by 2030, renewables share would be tripled. We had 15% some time ago, and that means that, at least on paper, we are ready to have 45 to 50 in 2030. Is the countryside ready for that? Well, from the point of view of Brussels, it's hard to say. But these fora are supposed to help there, to build awareness. It's happening? Yes. To come back to your question, largely it is not so much about regulations, because we've got enough of those. We've got our targets, ambitious objectives defined ahead of time. Now it is about implementing it the smart way, so that it would help us to reach the goals and targets that we already have. Also, we need to support how to finance it after 2027. We need to have it in the back of our heads. The game is already on. Things are already happening. There are various European messages, and the Trade Chamber is taking a closer look. So first, let's look at the European examples of this transformation. You've been following the situation. So tell us about good examples that could be a source of inspiration for us. I've got a number of reservations when it comes to the European approach to regulating the European energy market. Our agency, Polish agency, has been following what's happening globally. But you asked about regulations, how these should be drafted. Business-wise, we are in a very good place when it comes to renewables. We can easily obtain technology. The conditions are good, but the devil is in the detail. It's about the enforcement. The European New Deal is there, flashy and shiny, as business says. A lot of money for the European transformation, but there is this American movement too. The Americans have used IRA, an interesting mechanism, Inflation Reduction Act, carrot versus stick. In a year, 22-23, proved that they had an advantage over the European solution, and because production is being moved. Yes, it's about the business approach. The Americans think like entrepreneurs. They have an idea for business that makes sense, either test it quick, decide, and transfer the money to verify if it makes sense or not.
So then we have lots of options to release funds from the EU, but then there are so many constraints to receive this funding, to have them disbursed, that sometimes a business must employ one or two people specifically for the purpose of servicing the funding. So everyone was emphasizing the importance of streamlining this heaps of regulations. So on the turn of 2020 to 2023, Americans attracted about $1 billion US more of investment, including hydrogen investment. And these investment projects, they leaked out of the European market. And because of that excellent, simplified legal background, that option won. So we have that breakthrough where in the European order, countries were unable to come up with programs that could not invest into the investors. And eventually, those who prepare these projects, they cannot use that. And it's actually the French, starting from January 1st, set up a program which is targeted at attracting 20 billion in the form of high-tech investment. Now there is the question about Poland. And the question is about legislative measures. We need to be smart. Let me use that example of hydrogen management and administration. So, when collecting all legislation related to certain type of industry in one place, we could offer many benefits. So over-regulation and fragmentation of legislation is favorable to the biggest players only. They can have the necessary resources that can live with all this abundance of regulations. Small and medium-sized companies do not have the sufficient capacity to deal with such legislation. So I don't think that we managed to implement such programs, but we should attract large strategic investment that would move all the other smaller investments ahead. May I have also comments from other panelists, please? How about our support to that development? Do you think that Europe has the right method for supporting that development? I think this is a complex topic, and I think that we could organize a separate panel dedicated to that topic. It's about this common market, well, single market, and the economic assistance and aid. We're different from the US. As you said, Germans and French, well, they do have money and then can release their own funds to the industry. We do not have these funds. Well, perhaps we do, but we spend them onto something else. It's a matter of priority. It's a matter of scale, too. But the Zero Industry Act will be processed and voted in the European Parliament, but it's been on the table for a year now. If French and Germans are prepared to vote on it and we are not, well, we'll see, and perhaps the professor could comment on that too. I agree with my colleague here. The EU is very different from the US. We are where we are. We might say that we haven't done certain things, that we are late, but let us look at certain structural issues here in Poland. So let me use biogas as an example. From the point of view of farmers, it might not be the priority. Well, with hydrogen, that is going to take a while because of regulatory issues. But there are certain structural difficulties. The size of farms. If you take the number of biogas plants and juxtapose the number of farms and the size of farms, well, biogas plants are built where farms of large acreages are located. So this is the matter of structure, and we need to look at it. Then we need to refer each technology to what is happening on the market. If we talk about biogas, biogas is to compete with natural gas, I believe. So the question is whether the investment is going to be profitable, whether it is going to generate a return. I'm not certain what you mean by regulation. We need a set of tools that would offer over the lifetime of a biogas plant, that is 20 to 25 years, a certain rate of return. So this is the matter of accessing the grid. For years, we've been saying that there are issues with connecting to the grid. So with that, we cut off one method of selling the product from biogas plants. When we look at different players, we can see that they respond in many different ways. So access to the grid is another structural problem. And I think I need to stop here. Right, you need to stop here, at least for a moment. And let me go back to the agency. Well, actually, let me refer to that myth that Poland doesn't have sufficient funds to that purpose. Perhaps we didn't 10 or 15 years ago. When the money is here, it is now about the allocation, it is now about the objectives. Obviously, we cannot compare ourselves to Germans or French, but we need to focus on the investment project of strategic importance. So let us look at electromobility, at electric chargers. A company that built a Polish electromobility scene. Now we're having this huge investment projects from Intel, and we're shifting to a very different level. So there are very many players who see the potential on investing in this part of Europe. Well, these are Koreans, the Chinese, the Americans. Well, the Chinese, they love investing into energy storage, energy warehouses. And then once this Ukrainian and Russian conflict ends and we are engaged in restoration, rebuilding of Ukraine, and even if we don't, Jasionka and Poland at large will be the transit country. So it's about choosing the right priorities, and we can overcome any difficulties which are here to come. Right, I like your approach. So let us now ask practitioners, Agrofert and farmers' activity. So Agrofert, what opportunities do you see here in this context? Actually, as it is, I'm a Pole and a Czech at the same time. In Poland, we look at statistics. So let's say we have 15,000 of cattle breeders, and they are our clients. And trust me, out of that 15,000 of breeders, I am able to come up with perhaps 100 or 150 farms or locations of these breeders. The rest is fragmented. As you mentioned, they are not connected to the grid. Well, we're like far, far behind. We're lagging behind here in Poland. As a technological company, we're unable to change it. It's about introducing the right legislation. It's about streamlining certain processes, and that's been easy. This is not a very difficult thing to change, but we've been talking about it here at this forum for 5 to 7 years, right? And it hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. Now it's about pumping gas to the grid. And trust me, no gas pipeline is able to accommodate the gas. And now, look what we have. We need this gas. You said that there are no capacities, but do you mean like there are no technical capacities, or there are no there is no goodwill? Well, goodwill or good faith is one thing, but then let's talk about pumping. Let's take pumping. So in order to pump this gas to the grid, you need to purify this gas. We need to buy membranes that purify that gas. And we need to have these membranes supplied. And last year, it turned out we could put our hands on 2 containers of membranes only. So we want to be the superpower, building bioethanol plants But these days, it takes 8 to 12 months to co-generate. You need to produce it. It's not that the whole market is sitting and back and watching the Polish market to move. We have delivered a biogas plant in South Korea, and same for France. We built a biogas plant of 6 megawatts, and 100 farmers supply substrate to that biogas plant, and that would be a great option for Podlasie region in Poland. If I have 10 farmers here in the room, trust me that after the debate, 9 of them would approach me and ask me to deal with them on a one-to-one basis. So we have this reluctance to operate and work together as a team, as a group. We should have experts, we should have co-ops that should do it together. A farmer should supply the substrate to someone else.
Right. We have a national problem. We find it difficult to cooperate. It's a vice of ours. You have mentioned 100 farmers. Let's be honest. Signing 100 contracts is very risky for a company. Then you've got a biogas plant, and the farmers will say, we want to change the price. And that translates into other things. I can tell you more later. Co-ops is an option, but you need to educate people. You need to show that they have a skin in the game. One more thing. Lead time, or the implementation time, if you will. We have 5 investments in Poland. You will see biogas plants in 3 to 4 years' time at the earliest. It's a certain series of events. First, you need to adapt a farm for the plant to be built there. You need to see that. One more thing. It is not what you get. It's not a silage. It's waste. Only that type of plant can change things. We try to combat that, but we are technology companies. We can do certain things, others not. We can give you insights and tips, and farmers should sit down with companies like ours and to develop a plan to realize what they want. And the agency. Well, I couldn't like it more. But maybe you could disagree about something. There is no reason to disagree. Coming together, building associations. It's easier to build regulations for groups of business people. Cable pulling is an option. You will be able to link groups to the existing infrastructure. Risk sharing is important. Similarly, we have an issue with exporters. This is a similar problem. We could be stronger players abroad, but first we need to build groups, consortia. We've tried that. We haven't succeeded. We need to work together more. We need regulations that promote team effort. You see only upsides there. You share risks, 1, and 2, you have this will to cooperate. Krzysztof Dzieduszyński, a practitioner in the area of renewables, you'll present your perspective. So there will be a dispute after all. Go ahead. Polish farmers. Polish farming. You've mentioned Korea and the US. Let's go back to Poland. There is this one issue. Yes, you could discuss technologies and cooperatives, but first you need power in the grid, you need to be able to connect. And you need to be able to connect. Distribution, transmission, capacity needs to be invested in. This is the priority. Yes, regulations necessary, cable pooling, all fine and very well. You could get 100% as much sources. No, twice as much photovoltaics is even not enough. You need at least 3 times. And yes, if it comes to peak generation, there'll be problems. I've got 82 megawatts, and sometimes they disconnect me, and I cannot supply, I cannot deliver. Did you get compensation? Yes. 25% is the power surplus that I have. When you've got peak, it doesn't go to the grid. But we are working on hydrogen technologies. What we want is to store that surplus in hydrogen storage systems. Secondly, soon, virtual prosumer regulations will kick in. For farmers, it might be great business, but remember, you need to be able to connect. You need to be able to connect to the grid and transmit what you've generated. Also, hundreds, thousands of megawatts, but it's all dead. Mr. President, last year extended the existing contracts for a reason. Here, in this region, 40 megawatts was blocked. Decisions were taken in 2007, so the permits were granted, but those plants will never be built because turbines cannot be delivered there. So a wind farm will never be built there, and it's 40 megawatts that could be already in use. At this point, we in Poland produce 1/3 of what we need, I mean renewables. Imagine the following scenario. You have to remember that biogas plants and renewable plants, photovoltaic plants, you have them in the countryside. But the thing is, the main issue is to connect, to be able to connect. If you triple your capacity to connect and transmit, the situation will be great because we will be self-reliant. But then the grid operator will say that it destabilizes the system and they cannot take in all this power. Right, but I've mentioned hydrogen for a reason. It is one of the pieces of the puzzle that give you stability. You also have energy storage systems. Look at the number of large-scale storage systems decisions that have been issued. There are Chinese capital companies that win, and we may witness energy prices being manipulated. You can have 1 giga and you can manipulate the prices. It is the farmers and SMEs that should actually play an important role. Mind you, the quality of the grid is very poor. Those small players may stabilize their situation, improve the quality of the grid. This is the way to go. What have we seen since 2015 in Poland? That is this act on renewables. It's worse than scandalous. This act was tragic. How many amendments were there? There were amendments to amendments to amendments. This is what we saw. So we need to straighten it. We should not play around. We need to cooperate with practitioners that have got up to 20 years of experience in the renewable sources. They speak to business and other players on how to make the sector better. A very important recommendation, or rather recommendations. Ryszard Pawlik, you have wanted to speak, to follow up on what you said. Methane. We've talked about it for 5 or 6 years now. The government presented to Brussels a draft of a document that's supposed to be ready in a few months' time. It's an update of our plan for energy and climate 2030. Drafted very quickly. It should have been delivered earlier. The previous government wasn't really interested in that. The Commission took umbrage, and, a document had to be tabled. Two issues here. Biomethane. 7 to 8 billions. 3 to 3.5 says the Commission, the industry says 2. That's the capacity, but in the draft we get 0.5 as a forecast. Today we see 0.5. So maybe in half a decade we will see why we had just 0.5. Who is to be blamed? To stick to this plan. Yes, you're right, sir. The comment was made offline. Prosumers. 1,400,000 prosumers. 1 million was what we got in the years 2019, 2022. Professor, you agree? Am I correct? Yes. And now we are talking about 2 million in 2030. I believe that this number is too small. But just because you have put something on paper is not enough. And yet, ambitions are important and targets are important because they make you more ambitious. Professor, I understand that you could also give us the case study. I've been dealing with public policy, climate policy, energy policy. You see, people think that you are successful because you've exceeded a goal, even if it is a very low number. So what we see in this plan, this is just something to begin with. In the plan, what we need is a bigger number for biogas. Our grids should be ready to blend up to 10% of biogas. The question, is it going to happen? Because if we had that, you could pump gas into the grid. Issues. I think that the society plays an important role here. So we need to talk to the society. Urban management plans can help. But we need a dialogue, because we shouldn't follow the path of the wind farms, because basically things were included last minute. So the biogas sector must not do that. If you do that, you're just going to fall flat on your face. You need energy co-ops. Local and regional authorities also need to be active. They need to set up cooperatives for themselves and help others to set them up. Local authorities need to draft development strategies. Look what's there. I looked at the old ones. I reviewed 20 and I was fed up. They are basically all the same. They're all basically copy-paste. 70–75%. Supply plans for heat and energy. You need those. It's a must. The question is, what about utility companies, energy companies, how they are going to use those plans? Companies are supposed to be included in the process. It is not vacuum that you work in. You need dialogue. Ultimately, you need to be able to attract a company, but soon this company will need a zero-emission source. If it's not there, they will drop out of the supply chain. Mr. Dzieduszyński, would you like to add something?
I work with a great municipality in the center of Poland. The name of the municipality is Uniejów. And actually, it's surprising, they do exactly what the professor has described. So they have their own sources of heating, their own photovoltaic farm, their cogenerator and heat pumps at residents and solar panels on the roofs. They have organized all that, and they're a great example of we can do it at the municipal level. So it's feasible, but you need a good success story to prove it. With that, municipalities will be just presenting that because, well, that's a great way to go about it. And I agree that we should look at PVs and the wind turbines and biogas plants. So let's put them together into one bag, and let's start by demonstrating what we can do right here in Poland. We need some time for that. We need several months to do that, but we need a partner that is going to listen to us. Do not forget that we have farmers. Farmers should do all these things and arrange for renewable energy sources, and the farmer needs technological partners who know the methodology and can release farmers from the burden of doing all these extra activities. Right, we have some questions from the floor, so let's hear very briefly from our panelists. I can see that there are 3 questions, but we must be disciplined. So, straight to the point. I wanted to advertise our agency, the Agency for Investment and Trade. You mentioned that membrane procurement difficulty. So perhaps you could use our services, like in April, we have this trade mission to the Hydrogen Convention, and this is where you can talk to the leaders of certain technologies. In principle, we support the expansion of Polish enterprises, but if there are any critical resources which are hard to come by on the Polish market, then we can simply take you to the core producer, to the producer producing the original product. And I'll be here, I'll be around today, so please approach me. We offer our assistance free of charge, so feel free to use our services. Thank you for the recommendation. Well, let me mention one more aspect, which is agrovoltaics. That topic was debated in a heated debate a few years ago. So that allows for farming activity. And we have it in Germany, in France, in Italy. There are some reports of the Testing and Research Center. And the report comments on the huge potential of Poland, Spain, etc. But then there are different approaches to the farming land and to non-farming land. It's difficult to solve the problem of this land classification and eligibility for the PV purposes, but we are working on achieving our goal for PVs by 2030. And from the professor, sir, very briefly, if we look at biogas plants from the business point of view, we have a model, and its most sensitive element that we developed in the Warsaw Business College is the matter of substrate. If the price of the substrate goes up by 10%, then NBV goes down by 15%. And that's the key. So we have the whole list of issues, claims, demands, etc. But we want to develop our network of biogas plants. So now we have this question about the potential actions that should the government take. We have this competition from the natural gas. Natural gas is not prohibited. And so far, it is admitted as a resource here, and we need to end with that. Well, in March 2022, we had assumptions for amending the energy policy, and biogas was mentioned only once in these assumptions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have at least 4 questions. You can raise your hands. 5 questions. We can do it, but we'll take very quick questions and very short answers. Please introduce yourself and just offer a brief comment. Well, I think that one basic thing that we need is to answer this question, why? Because, in my opinion, we are overlooking that demand for energy in food processing. These sources of energy should be located at the food processing sites. Let's stop subsidizing Chinese producers of PV panels. Let's decide about the products that we want to produce in our country. We need to have an industrial product that is going to have a long-term fiscal effect in this country. The money borrowed from our children and grandchildren is spent on subsidizing foreign competitors. Otherwise, we will not increase the competition of our farming sector. I come from the experimental plant of the zootechnical department. Since 2015, we've been exploiting a biogas plant of 2 megawatts, and I'm a big proponent of biogas plants that should be set up at farms. Well, in particular, farms with animal production should have that developed. And in my opinion, that is also an alternative source of income. For that reason, we set up and started that biogas plant project. So we have this animal production, plant production, well, crop growing, and biogas plant. The professor has mentioned substrates. And he mentioned farming waste. It is not easy to get such farming waste. Let's say that if we have a big farm, let's say that we have a big farm without animal production and several thousand of tons of crops, all that plant waste, crop waste can be processed. And then the difficulty is that we have these volatile and rapidly changing energy prices and the red tape. So every year we get another institution that comes to control us. Thank you. Right. So our panelists mentioned the speakers mentioned technologies, etc., and waste processing. So if I may answer your first question, when farmers see and measure their benefits from generating their own energy and having the rate of return at the right level, if they use that energy storage system, well, that's one thing, but can we replace technologies? I don't think so. With PVs, we'll never going to be competitive here. Together with Mr. Podhański, we did the first prosumer in Poland 10 years ago. And indeed, well, the price works miracles. Unfortunately, there is no microphone to the speaker. So we're talking about the energy and balancing the cost. And we calculated that. So let us go back to this biogas plant. So yesterday I was listening to you, to the minister, and now we have drought in Poland. Are you aware that we can dry some post-fermentation fraction from this biogas plant? And this is what we do here in Poland. We can purify some residue and return it to the rainwater discharge.
Now, there is a report that describes the so-called low emissions technology in this part of Europe. You will learn about the technologies that we have, how far behind we are, even if you look at the Danes. So there is this value chain, and the biogas operates differently there. It's a business model that could be used. Red tape? I agree with you. PVC panels. Net Zero Industry Act has been mentioned. There is an objective there to have renewables bidding. Price would be one factor, and non-price factor is also included. We will see how it works. I understand how you think, and yet there is this trap we could fall into. People say photovoltaics is Chinese-made, but the alternative is Russian gas and Russian coal, right? Yes, I agree with Ryszard. There is this trap we fall into. We believe that we can produce everything by ourselves. Not possible in this globalized world. PVC imported from China cannot be beat on price. Energy storage systems are also imported en masse. Let's focus on smart specializations in the value chain, and let us be best at what we do. Lithium-ion batteries, we are doing increasingly better there. We've had questions. We'll have just one more round, but you can talk later. Adam Stańczyk from Regional Authorities Planning, spatial planning. There's one thing I would like to talk about that. It is underestimated when it comes to renewables development. You need to have mandatory zones where local authorities would be forced to invest in energy storage to store this energy, for example, from farmers that generate it. Secondly, bans. High-class soils are not renewable. You should never develop photovoltaics there. Also, I do not agree with what's been said. We should never develop ourselves, buy from others. I never said that, was the comment of the panelist. We need to have high aspirations to develop a biogas plant that would be adapted to our farms, the substrates that we have, and the size of our farms. Maybe it could be developed centrally. It would be a device that would be licensed, and a few dozen companies would get the license and let them produce it en masse. Wind energy. I disagree that the farmer is the ultimate beneficiary of that solution. No, the owner of the farm is the beneficiary, and they often make money at the expense of the Polish landscape, and it's quite often not adapted to the Polish needs. Maybe we should have our own model. It would be 60 to 70 meters big, lower capacity, but it would be deployable better in Poland. Those higher capacity systems do not fit our conditions. It would be better to have somewhat smaller systems that would better fit the Polish conditions. I've never said that we shouldn't produce in Poland. I want things to be produced in Poland, but in some cases it is not profitable at all, because certain technologies are being developed in parallel, and the investment in R&D there is so high that you cannot win in this race. It's better to concentrate on the areas where we are really good and grow there. That is, there are those projects financed by the Polish agencies, and they take so long that once the project is complete, the market has already, developed something far superior. Membranes, yes, we can assemble them, only to produce in the world, one in Japan and the other in the US. As a country, even as Europe, we cannot compete with them. There was a good example given. Those renewable sources zones. Spatial planning is a solution. Here you can have a biogas plant. Here you've got wind generation. People agree, and there you are, Bob's your uncle. Wind energy systems, bigger and smaller. We want to have lower prices. And you get lower prices when you have a bigger installation. I'm not going to delve into details. Five minutes. In Kujawsko-Pomorskie you have many wind energy generation systems. You had this pathology when it comes to where windmills were located. I'm a climate specialist, so I'm not saying that smaller solutions are better for Poland. No, higher towers are better. They give you economies of scale. I'm a farmer. There was this government program to finance small biogas plants. I'm interested. I prepared the land. I had this friend from Czechia. He was in this sector. the agency withdrew funding. The thing is, it got sold, so small biogas plants and we wanted to develop things for our own needs. Let's not talk about big ones. Let's talk about something that can be developed or built by small farmers. What's your question, sir? What about those small biogas plants? Very briefly. Join us. We've got systems up to 50 kilowatts. They work, they operate. We can display them, we can show you. Professor, briefly. I'm sorry to hear that you didn't get funding for your project. There should be as few examples as yours as possible. Because yes, large biogas plants are more financially viable, the big ones, but you should also get the ones like the one that you wanted to develop. And the smaller ones will also exist in the market. They will constitute 20%, and we need to have a policy in place to help it. In Germany, you've got 10,000 small biogas plants, 200 big ones, biomethane. It works. You can have benchmarks, and you can simply borrow and transplant it. We could go on. Now, you can continue during the break. Thank you to the audience. A short break.